I'll just repeat the question here that I got. What does having a research assistant look like when you're not a full-time staff member at a think tank? How does one go about finding one? Is it possible to have a volunteer? If not, and parentheses, who wants to work for free? Does one just pay out of pocket? So the answer here to how to get a research assistant, it again comes down almost entirely to the question of what degree of complexity are we dealing with in terms of the kind of research that you need done. And what I would say is that there's a pretty wide range of things that one can have a research assistant do on a book. The absolute minimal kind of a project or research task might be that, let's say you know exactly what book has a certain source that you need a reference to, quote from, you know exactly where it is. You just literally need someone to run to the library for you and look the thing up and give you that information, or something like that, which basically requires very little, if any, work. And the easiest thing to do here might be just to go on Upwork or one of these outsourcing sites, and you can find someone for dirt cheap to do this stuff. I remember, for example, when I was thinking about putting together a book proposal for a book on gifted children, one of the things that I wanted to do was look into what kind of publishers or agents might be appropriate. So I put together a massive bibliography of related titles, and then I just basically needed someone to go through each of the acknowledgments in these books and see if they had any information on the agents and the publishers. And so this wasn't particularly thought work that could be done, just a little grind in terms of the amount of time. And I think I found someone on Upwork for $5 or $10, and it was a college student at a university in New York. And the reason she did it was not because it was a particularly good use of time, but basically that they were trying to build up their reputation and build up their profile on Upwork to be able to get more work. And so they viewed this assignment as a loss leader. And that was that. Now, the difficulty comes where you have research work that's more intensive or involved. And here, the basic question to think about is, I would say there are basically two big questions. One is, what kind of talent do you need to be able to do the work? And here, I think the relevant questions are, how much of a time commitment do you need? How intelligent a person do you need? How much of a subject matter expert do you need? And so this will vary. I mean, often what you find with a so-called research assistant is actually you realize that not only do they bring research assistants to the table, but they also bring the ability to ghostwrite different sections for you. They have the ability to give you constructive feedback. They can frame an issue in a certain way. They can offer editing. They can do a lot of different things that you can get with a high quality research assistant. And then the other thing to think about is what kind of a relationship do you want to have with a research assistant? In the first example I gave, is it just purely a transactional thing where you need something done and that's it? Or is the nature of the project, is it one where you might have to confide certain sensitive information where you need a degree of discretion? Or is it is it the kind of thing where you may not be entirely comfortable managing someone and you need someone flexible? Or do you view hiring a research assistant as the early phases of a long-term relationship or collaborator where you're investing in a person, they're investing in you, and then maybe you can both work on something together? These are all difficult questions, and they're going to depend on a case-by-case basis, but these are the kind of questions that I think are worth addressing. Now, okay, so then the question becomes, well, how do you go about finding one, and is it possible to get someone to work for free? Okay, so the first question on how much to be spending. Can you get someone to work for you for free? And here, I mean, I guess it depends what the definition of free is. I mean, if by free we're saying, do you not have to write them a check? Sure, it is possible. But if the question is, can you get someone to work for you without putting anything of value on the table, the answer is emphatically no. Okay, so what does it mean to get someone to work for free? So I've basically, by a certain definition, worked for free on any number of books. I remember early on, the way I got involved with this business was basically that I had decided going into college and then in college that I had certain goals. So one was that I wanted to break into elite conservative circles. Another goal I had was to try to work in government as a political appointee. And then I also knew I wanted to go to law school. And I realized for any of these three goals, I made a certain network and a certain set of relationships. And so what I did was I figured out who are the people who would be valuable to have as mentors and as people as professional colleagues. And then I looked into who was writing a book, and I basically said, rather than asking for $15 an hour or whatever a research assistant in college might be able to charge, what the calculation I made was that I'm going to offer to work for free, but what I'm actually getting in exchange is something that is very hard to put a price tag on, which is the ability to be a confidant of someone relatively powerful or influential, get access to their network, get them to write a letter of recommendation, get the benefit of their mentorship and wisdom. And so if this was obviously a win-win for both of us. It was a win for the person, but it was a win for me in the sense that this investment that I made early on. I mean, even today, nearly 15 years later, a lot of the clients I have now who are paying a decent amount of money are stemmed from or were people who I got to know during this period. So the question, as you're thinking about whether to hire someone, is one. I mean, think about really whether or not you have the budget and how much of a monetary value there is. But two, do you have the ability to bring? If you're not ready to pay a fair market value, the question is, do you have the ability to bring something to the table or something of value to the person who you want to recruit? And a big thing that ends up happening here, as you're thinking through that question, is the other question here on the table: how do you go about finding one? If you really think about the value problem you have to bring to the table, that question of how you find the right person answers itself, because obviously you're going to be in a position to add more value to someone who has a lot to gain by what you have to offer, and also has a certain interest or stake in what you're writing about. So, for example, let's say you're a former government official and you want to write a book about Russia. Well, the value proposition of that project is obviously going to be very high for let's say a graduate student who is working on their PhD on Russia, and their goal is to get a job in government where they could not only add value and have an interest in the subject you're writing about, but they could also benefit from the network and mentorship that you're offering. On the other hand, the value proposition is probably going to be a lot less if you're just going for some freelancer out there who's smart but knows absolutely nothing about foreign or whatever. They could do the work, but it's ultimately a transactional sort of a relationship. But to answer the question more directly, where can you find someone? I would say that probably one of the best things you can do, you can go to think about who are the professors in your field or area, and email them. They obviously have a network of younger people who can, who they can refer you to. Another thing would be to look at other books that have been written on your subject and go through the acknowledgments. And usually if you read the acknowledgments carefully, there will be some kind of mention of the researchers or the interns or whatever who worked on the book. You can just post an ad around in either in your network or on more generic sites like Upwork or Craigslist or whatever, and you'll get, I mean, the talent you'll get will be hit or miss, but you'll get people. Ask for references from other colleagues and friends, and usually they'll be able to provide someone. But again, the big point here is that behind these tactical questions about writing a book are usually much deeper, more strategic issues and questions to work out.